Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today on today's webinar on succession planning for financial advisors. Just waiting for a few more folks to stroll in here. We have a pretty good turnout today, so I want to make sure everybody's participating. Please feel free to ask any questions on the chat feature. We're going to try to get to everybody, but there is a lot of people on this, probably one of the most that we've ever done. So looks like it's certainly a hot topic. My name is Joe Nupieri, co-founder of Compass Acquisitions, and I'm here with my partner Scott Brittman.
Hello, everyone. And yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to raise your hand. I can allow you to talk. Or if you want to type out questions, you're more than welcome to do that as well too. But we will try to get to everybody. So we got one already recording available later. Yeah. Well, actually, we've been uploading them onto our YouTube channel. So I'll send everybody or Joe. It'll probably come from Joe. We'll send you out a link to the recording as well. It will probably be tomorrow that we have that uploaded, just because it takes some time to get up there. And then we'll also be sending out a copy of a practice profile to send out. And we're actually offering right now a free valuation for anybody that attended the webinar. So if you fill out the practice profile, send it back over to us. We'll actually do an actual valuation for your practice, and we can review that with you as well too. So yeah, kind of getting kicked off here. I think we can kind of do that. On to our first slide, and I think Joe will kind of start that off for you guys.
Yeah, this is just kind of going over some of the topics here that we're going to be covering today. Let's just wait. There we go. Okay, so first, just kind of evaluating some of your succession options. I think. Okay, yeah, sorry. Just trying to get the first slide here. Okay, so yeah, just want to go over quick. So evaluating some of your succession options. There are multiple options, multiple ways you can go. So we'll talk and kind of dive in a little bit on a few of those, just to kind of get your creative juices thinking. I know a lot of advisors we talk to don't really know or haven't really thought about it. So we'll kind of go into some of the options and what they are. Finding the right successor, I think, is probably one of the more important things. I think that finding the right fit is always going to be a huge component of succession planning, mergers, acquisitions. So we'll go into some of the things to look out for potential buyers or sell and stay opportunities, merger scenarios. So we'll cover that a little bit into detail. Deal structuring, I think that's self-explanatory. Really, just kind of going into some of the basic or standard deal structures we see. I think pretty much. I mean, Scott and I have been doing this now well over 10 years, and I think every deal that we've done has been structured differently. But we'll go into that a little bit and talk there. Business valuations, another important item there. How to maximize the value. Some of the things that affect valuations is also going to be very important. And again, like Scott had mentioned, we could handle everybody on a case by case basis. If you fill out some info, we could certainly give you an idea of what your business is worth, the value range there, and talk a little bit about things you might want to improve on or change. But valuation's important, and then really the timeline options for your succession. We talk to a lot of people who are less than 5 years out, or maybe they want to sell the business and be out in 6 months to a year. Maybe they want to stick around for a period of 5 years or longer, and just really what that looks like, and some options you might have there. So that's really most of the topics we're going to cover today. And again, each we do these on a monthly basis. Moving forward, just so everybody knows, we are working on being able to provide CE credits towards CFP designations. This particular one, we're not set up yet for that, but moving forward, we will with this similar presentation. So keep a lookout for that as well. And with that being said, just kind of dive right into to evaluating some of the succession options here.
Yeah, so evaluating succession options, identifying potential, internal successors within the firm is pretty easy. You don't have to repaper. If you are with an independent RA only, typically it's a negative consent form or a letter that's sent out, and a one-page document that needs to be signed, typically e-signature. Sometimes nothing at all. So those are obviously, very attractive situations for you as a potential seller, is to find somebody within your firm or even within your broker dealer or custodian. Definitely something that if possible, and you find, you think the fit's there, it's always something to consider heavily. Exploring external options like mergers and sell, or sell and stays, full or partial acquisitions, always something you can look at as well too. You may find your fit being outside of your BD, and that's okay. If you do find that, I think that it's important to try to work with somebody that has done this in the past. We always say you don't want to be somebody's guinea pig. You want somebody that has that process in place, somebody that has done an acquisition before and can show you that process of how they, successfully have transitioned over their clients, to an, or the clients they bought over to their new firm. But I think that's pretty important in a transition, is you want somebody that, really has that process down. Even if they've just transitioned a book over, at least they have some sort of process, and that's always something important to look at. Considering grooming and mentoring new talent, bringing in a junior advisor. This is one that I'm not very high on. I think it depends on the situation. If you have a son or, a nephew or niece or a daughter in the business, maybe that might be something that you've been considering for a while, and it may be the path that they want to go down. A lot of the times what we see with junior advisors when it's not a relative is, you'll bring in somebody, it may not be for them. The average dropout rate is about 90% with brand new advisors coming out of college. So you may dedicate a couple of years into grooming a potential junior and them not want to take over the book eventually. And then you're right back to square one. And that could be something that, you really want to consider before, looking into that option is, did I just waste all of my time grooming somebody for them to not take over my book? Now I have to restart the process. You may have a time frame in mind of it, or an age in mind as to when you want to be out, and that could certainly push that time frame back for you. So I would be careful of that. Obviously, if you can do it, if you have a son, daughter, relative in the business that you want to groom and you think it's a good idea, that could be the best way to do things. But again, just be weary of the downfalls of that as well too. And obviously assess the financial and operational feasibility of each option. If you are, if you're with Ameriprise and you're moving over to an LPL advisor, what does that look like? There are some, products that may not be portable. And those are all things that you're going to have to consider while you're potentially making a move over there. So making sure you're compatible, the operational feasibility of that option is something you want to really look into, as well as, the financial feasibility of that as well too. Sometimes you may get paid a little more to, you know, transfer your book over from BD to BD. So that's always something to look at as well too.
Yep, and also, back to just grooming a junior. I think we've definitely seen it happen where it works out. So it's not that it will never work out. It's just there are a little more challenges than when you're working with an established team that has, whether they've already done an acquisition or not, they're established. They've been in the business. They've proven that they can run a successful financial firm. So you there's less risk involved with selling or merging with a firm like that. And then the external options really that can be somebody who's within your broker dealer. You just not within your firm too. So when you look at the first one, internal successors within the firm, that's like you're part of a firm that has 10 advisors, and you end up selling or selling to them. The external could be somebody like a Raymond James to Raymond James, even though you've never met the person. That's always going to be, most sellers always are going to want the path of least resistance in many cases. So we hear it all the time. They want to stay with the same broker dealer, or they want them to clear through the same custodian. So these are just some of the options that we see, and I think, like Scott said, you just kind of determine which makes the most sense, and really, well, and we'll go into it a little bit more, but really finding what's important to you in the buyer, and that'll, I think, kind of move us here to the next slide. So starting off on what are some of the must-haves in a potential successor. So when I start talking to an advisor and they tell me, "Hey Joe, I'm 5 years out or 3 years out, whatever the time frame is," the first thing I'll say is, "Okay, what are some of the must-haves? Is location important to you? Do you need somebody who's physically located within a 20-minute drive, half-hour drive?" Many cases it's not as important, especially now with the emergence of Zoom and virtual meetings, things like that. But there are still a lot of people who like to meet face to face, and if that's the case, do you want somebody that, do they have to physically have a location there, or are you okay with them opening up and keeping open a physical location in that area, even if they don't already have one? Another thing is broker dealer to broker dealer. Is it, are you absolutely against repapering and going through the ACAP process on your whole book? Some people are. Some people really aren't, as it's not as important to them. So that's something you also want to, also, what is their philosophies and investments, how, and we'll talk about that a little bit more as we go down, but just kind of getting, I like to get at least a 3 to 5 list, a list of 3 to 5 items on criteria that's important, and then it really does help us as we're trying to go out and match merger or sale opportunities. So that's one of the first things, and the other thing is deal breakers. Just as important, what are the things that you absolutely don't want in a potential buyer or successor? Do they have to have, is it somebody, if they just started in the business, is that something that's a deterrent to you? If they're, located in a different location than you are, is that a deterrent? It's just really conversely to what are your must-haves, right? Or what are things that you absolutely don't want? If somebody's doing dimensional funds, and that's primarily what they're doing, is that out of the question? Is that something that, or if they do, if they have, for instance, I'll give you an example, an RIA. RIAs who are pure RIAs don't have a broker dealer affiliation. Sometimes it's been the case where they don't want anybody with a broker dealer affiliation to take over their business. I've had it where I've had somebody say they don't want anybody who's ever been affiliated with a broker dealer to take over their business. Now, some of these situations are a little exaggerated, and some people might be a little more selective than even they need to be. But that's kind of, I would say those are some things to think about. And then personalities. Your clients better than we do, better than a potential buyer will. So you have to know the personality, and the way we typically do it is we will usually start if we have somebody come to us and wants us to find a seller, or a seller wants us to find a buyer, I always like to start off with a 15, 20-minute introductory phone call. It gives you an idea of their personality, who they are, a little background, how they do business. And that's important. It really is kind of like a dating game where you have to date these folks and understand if you like them, because you're gonna know, hey, you know what, my clients are gonna love this guy and they're gonna, they'll buy into everything that we talk about, or just based on his personality, they're not going to like them at all. And I think that's where you have to kind of look into that a little bit as well. So the other thing is, investment portfolios. I think you can have different investment portfolios and complement each other well, but a lot of times you want to make sure that they do business similar. Now, some people will say, "Hey, listen, what do I care? When I sell the business, the buyer can do whatever they want. If they're all in fee based and I have an annuity book or 401ks, as long as the buyer is, open to having those types of assets, and maybe they want to convert A share mutual funds over to fee based, after the purchase, that's okay. But I think, a lot of times we see that they want to match you want to have a similar investment port. If you're doing custom portfolios, or if you're hiring a third party money manager, all of those things are going to matter, to some it won't matter, but those are just some things to think about. And then, oh, do we have?
Yeah, we have a couple of questions. Maurice, I'm gonna allow you to talk, so I'm opening it up to you right now if you want to ask your question.
Hi,
Oh,
Maurice.
thank you. Yeah, thank you. I was just, if you could just elaborate a little bit further, when it comes to the junior advisor, our situation might be a little different. Our junior advisor is thankfully staying with us, but we're going to graduate him. We're going to move him we're part of a bank, to a different market.
Okay.
So he will be building a new book, so to speak, but we're prepared to give him a base probably
Okay.
over for another 12 months. So any experience that you have with that, we clear through Raymond James, by the way, but we have a bank we'll be moving him from Destin, Florida to Atlanta, Georgia. So I don't know if you've seen scenarios like that or have any comments on that,
How
but I'd
long has he
appreciate
been in the business for?
Took him out of college. He's been with us now a year and a half, almost
Okay.
2 years.
Yeah, I mean, listen, again, we've seen both scenarios work, honestly, and if I think it's a lot of it is feel. How do you feel about it? You're already down the path a year and a half now, so you've kind of gone that route. So I think seeing it through is probably your best option right now.
Yeah.
But I would say this: if it doesn't work out for you, maybe that's not the path you want to take again, if that is the way. I mean, there's a lot of qualified buyers out there that have done this,
Yeah.
that have that experience and that track record that they could show to you. But again, if it
Okay.
works out with a junior, it's great, because you have a young advisor now that you just got out of college, that has been working with the clients now for a year and a half.
Yes.
You're not really going to get those questions about, what's going to happen in 10 years. If you sell to somebody who's 55 or
Right.
50, you may get those questions still, like, what is the succession plan after this person? So, it's almost the younger advisor nowadays is almost like the unicorn. So if you can find it and it's a good one, it can absolutely be a great situation for your clients and yourself.
Yeah, and
That's
good question, Maurice. And I think, just to touch on that real quick, and I want to keep this going because I know we only have an hour here, but a lot of it is on timeline too. So I don't recommend, if you're trying to get out of the business in 2 years, bringing on a junior is just time consuming. It may or may not work, and you may find yourself back in the same spot a year or two from now. If you have a longer runway, 5 years, even 10, I think a junior at least is a good, if you have somebody you're comfortable with, is a good path to go down. It's just, a lot of times what happens is people in the latter part of their career, they typically don't want to bring somebody on, have to train them, have to bring them up to speed. They're usually trying to do less work, so that's kind of a task that they don't want to take on. But if that's something you're open to, yeah, I think we've seen that happen a lot, and successfully, so that's good that you have somebody.
Really good perspective. Thank you very much.
You got it. And then I have another question from Robert. Do you offer worksheets/questionnaires to assist in answering these succession planning questions? We do. We'll send out a copy of our practice profile, which will basically go over all the information needed in your book for us to be able to put a potential valuation on there. We're also open to, we'll reach out to you, to all of you next week, and we'll, any questions, feel free to email us if we don't get you on the phone. But anything you need from us, we're here to assist. So just feel free.
Do we have anybody? Okay. All right. So let's yeah, so I was just kind of touching on the portability. Like Scott had mentioned earlier, we see it a lot, like for instance, Ameriprise, and I use them as an example mainly because they have the river source annuities, right? And a lot of other companies don't take those or they're proprietary. Now, I have been noticing a few of our LPL advisors are if they're on the independent side, they're able to bring over those river source. But you want to just make sure the clients are portable and what they're in because it's kind of like if you're only gonna if you have a portion of your book that is not portable, then the buyer is either not going to value that portion of the book or it just you want to make sure if it's producing revenue, you want to make sure you're getting a valuation or a multiple for it. So I think that's where it's a challenge where if somebody takes a whole portion of your book and they're like, well, we can't really do anything with that. We can't get paid on the accounts. We're not going to bother, even valuing it.
Well,
So
even more importantly too is if you may have a client that is in that product that you can't port over, and then also in with managed money. And how do you do that? Do you leave the full client behind at that point? So those are all things you got to think about with portability.
yeah, and then just weighing the pros and cons of each potential buyer. I tell this to people all the time. I always recommend talking to a few different folks, in different types of, inside your broker dealer, outside your broker dealer, inside your firm, just to kind of, at the very least, have a learning experience of what other advisors are offering, and you may learn just from how different people do it. And when you narrow it down, it's like for instance those listing services, they can be good, but they're also you might get 1,000 inquiries in a matter of 20 minutes. It does make it challenging to say, okay, wow, I gotta break I gotta narrow it down. I think narrowing it down to maybe two or three options, maybe three to five at most, and just weighing the pros and cons of the offer themselves, of the offer itself, as well as maybe the type of practice and what they're offering from a structure standpoint as well. But sometimes you just know. I mean, we've had people where they don't have options. They find the right person, they click and it works, and that's who they want to go with. As long as we can work the numbers and the structure that makes sense for both sides, everybody's happy, and that's a win-win for everybody, I think. Um, so yeah, move over to the structure, and I think Scott will kind of touch on this a little bit here. This is an important part.
Yeah, structuring the sale, a lot of this is going to depend on how you want to see yourself get paid out, and obviously one thing that you're always going to want to look at too is talk with your CPA about this stuff too, because you may want to stretch out your payments over 2 years or multiple years for tax implication purposes. And structuring is the upfront payments usually somewhere between 10 and 50% down. 50% down is usually an internal acquisition. You may see a little more upfront. The upfront payments are usually non-refundable. Down payments are non-refundable for the most part. So if somebody's giving you a good amount of money up front, you want to make sure that that book is coming over, or the clients are coming over. And usually when you're internally, if you're transferring internally, you're usually looking at 90% plus in terms of retention. So that's usually a pretty easy transition, or easier transition. Seller financing, can be used for a portion, or sometimes in the entire portion of the purchase price can be financed. Typically, it's Honestly, if it's seller financing, I would say the most typical deal that we're seeing are 4 or 5 years. This set is anywhere from 3 to 6, but usually you'll see interest rates vary anywhere now between 5 and 10%. But seller will usually get maybe 10, 20 to 50% down, 4 to 5 year note at 5 to 10% interest. Usually less than 10%, but who knows where the rates are going right now. Bank financing has become a very popular option for buyers now. There's a bunch of banks now that specialize in these exact deals. They will finance up to 100%. And typically, the way that they're structured are 10-year amortized notes with 7 year. They're 7 year notes, but they're 10 years amortized, and basically it's a balloon payment after 7 years. But what's nice on the sell side is, you're paid out in a year, 12 months. You don't have to worry about holding a note. So if there's a default, that's not on you. That would be between the bank and the buyer. If there's a default on you holding a note, your recourse are a couple of options. It's really going and taking your book back or going to court. And obviously those are all things that you're not going to want to do. If you're, giving your clients the word that you're going to be selling your book to Joe Smith and this is who you trust, and then all of a sudden you have to go back and take your book back. Not good, not good for optics. So that's something that you want to consider when you're going into a deal like this. Most of the people, and especially the people that we're working with, we've vetted financially. They've done deals before. These are all characteristics you want to look into a potential buyer to make sure they are sound. And asking for tax returns and stuff, financial documents is not, that's something that's not really questions. I mean, those if you want to request those documentation from potential buyers, those are things that they will provide to you, and you want to feel comfortable. We do have a couple of questions. Gail, where do you find the banks financing these transactions? We work with three, dedicated ones right now. PPC loan out of Fort Worth, Texas. I believe they're Fort Worth, Texas, right outside of Dallas. Dustin is somebody that we work very closely with. There is another company called Live Oak Bank. They're in Wilmington, North Carolina. And then there's a third one that we work with called Skyview Partners. And Skyview and PPC loans are conventional rates, while Live Oak is an SBA lender with a variable rate. It's typically prime plus 2. But there's more of them. Those are just the three that we kind of work with. We've affiliated ourselves with over the past decade or so. But there are a lot of other banks that will do this as well too.
And they both do SBA and
Yeah.
non-S and conventional as well. I think most folks are trying to go conventional if they can, just because the SBA with the personal guarantee and some of the other things. But yeah,
There's a lot of broker dealers doing this stuff too. I mean, I know LPL is somebody that will give out loans to their advisors who are buying books as well too. So BDs are getting very big on lending out the money for these transactions as well too. So that's always something you can look at as well. And then another question here from Scott: how do you protect your payout if it's more than 1 to 2 years?
you mean if you're holding the note, that or through the bank, I guess would be my question. But if you're holding the
No, it's got to
note.
be through the if you're holding the note.
Yeah, so if you're holding the note, I mean, you really, your protection, right, is,
Nothing. It's
you have
hard to.
you have a note, and you like to think that the buyer is going to pay you in a timely fashion, whether it's monthly or quarterly, whatever's been agreed upon. There's really not a whole lot of protect. I mean, you're taking on risk, both buyer and seller, with the retention part of it.
How do you vet that? I mean,
I think, like Scott said, you find out from them. Hey, how financially solvent are you? Have you done deals before? Really just finding out, how long they've been in business. I would caution, and this is I don't see a lot of folks who want to really take this route anyway. But like, for instance, if you, let's say, a new advisor just in the business 2 or 3 years, wants to acquire a firm. somebody like that, not really well established, unless they're doing bank financing, or it might be if you're taking a risk, right? Because you're holding a note for 3 to 5 years, hoping that they're going to pay you, and everybody knows who wins when you have to go to court, right? I mean, it's all the attorneys. I mean, they love that stuff, but it's not good for us. So
I will say this is not, it's not typical for that to happen.
no,
Financial advisors, for the most part, don't want things on their U4, don't want disputes, don't want anything that can mess with their business. So it's rare that anything like that would happen. But you want to be comfortable with anybody that you're getting into a transaction with. And for the most part, if they've done this before, you should feel comfortable in a deal, in any deal, honestly. So vetting people out like that, I would say, go with somebody that's done this before. Go with somebody that doesn't have things in their U4, somebody that is reputable. Those are all things that you want to do. And we do a lot of that vetting process for you as well, too. We work with about 40 buyers across the country that we've vetted, that we've looked into, that have done this before. So that's something that we take pretty seriously, and we like to affiliate ourselves with teams that have done this before and that don't have things on the U4 and stuff. And the bank route may be the best. Honestly, it's something that's becoming very popular, even on the buy side too. I mean, it really opens up the cash flow for the buyer doing it through bank financing as well too, because if they're paying the note back on a 10-year time frame as opposed to a 4 or 5 year, they're going to be able to make money off of the book for a good portion of it until it's paid off, as opposed to it may be a little tighter if they're going through seller financing. So
I think the only way as a seller you may not want to use bank financing is if you almost want to use your practice as the sale of your practice as almost an annuity, right? So if you because the banks will usually pay the seller out after
12
12
months,
months
yeah,
or
they won't
after.
hold it for longer than 12.
Yeah. So, if you want to get paid out on your business for the next 5 years, whether it's through percentage of revenue or holding the note, bank financing might not be the route you want to go. But yeah, other than that, there's really no downside as a seller, making sure the buyer uses bank financing unless they're going to give you a high upfront payment and they know they have the capital readily available for you. That would be my suggestion for sure.
Frank, I'm going to open up the floor to you. I have a question here.
Hey Frank, can you hear us, Frank?
Looks like you're on mute.
Yeah, if you unmute, it'll there you go.
Yep, I can hear you.
Yeah,
He's saying, is it better to do a stock sale or an asset sale?
yep.
Good question. I think it depends on the buyer. I think there are firms that like to. I think most of these
I
are.
haven't seen any stock
Yeah,
sales.
most of
It's
these are
rare.
asset. Most of these are
Yeah.
asset sales, right? I mean, we've worked on a few stock sales where it was a larger firm, and they were splitting pieces of equity to some of the different. The seller has a son or a daughter that wants to stay on in an equity role. You may look at doing something like that or offering a stock, but I think I would say 90%, 95% of these that we've done in the last decade or so have been asset sales.
And definitely talk to your CPA about that as well too, because I know in an asset sale you can position it mostly as capital gains too. I don't really know how the stock one works. We don't do many of those at all, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that would be something I would definitely check with your CPA about, and see what the tax implications are on both of them if you are considering a stock sale.
Yeah, there may be advantages that, we don't know. I mean, we're not CPAs, so, we always we work with a few CPAs that help us through some of the valuation and things like that. But, at the end of the day, I always because we're based out of New York and everybody's all over the country. So it's just for us to give any sort of, but I think we know little about that as far as talking to your CPA and stock sales and how that could help you and things like that. So on any of these deals, we always recommend just kind of giving your CPA of having them do a once over on it and making sure you're limiting your liability in the taxes.
Are you guys going to get to valuing a practice?
Yeah, we are.
Yep.
That's coming up probably, yep, right after this slide. I'm just going to finish up this slide. The last option I have here is kind of an earnout, a percentage of revenue. And a percentage of revenue, yeah, an earnout is a good idea if you are, maybe somebody that's going to stay on and help convert your book. Maybe you have a portion of your book that you think you convert over to manage money. That's always a good idea if you wanted to stay on for a couple of years and help convert that, because you really, the way that an earnout will work is maybe the first 2 years you as the seller will get 70% of the revenue and the buyer will get 30, and then by year 3 it will be 50-50, and then year 4 and 5 it might turn to 30-70. So it's a really good way to maximize the value of your book if you're helping convert that book over. Earn out, really, those are kind of the only times that earnouts actually will make sense.
Or yeah, if you want to stick around and
Yeah,
you feel like
you can grow the book.
yeah, like let's say you want to monetize your practice, right? You have an event that you want to monetize or partial sale, and but you want to stick around, and you feel like if you take some of the administrative and day-to-day stuff off your plate, you still have the drive to want to grow the business. Even after a sale, but you kind of line up your succession plan, you monetize it. Now you want to stick around for 5 years, but you instead of just sticking around and managing clients, you actually want to feel like you could bring in new assets. An earnout might make sense there.
That kind of goes right into business valuation.
Yep.
These are all, these are kind of the things that you want to have handy to be able to get a valuation done. Profit and loss statements, revenue breakdowns, tax returns. A lot of the BDs will have this stuff for you printed in reports, AUM reports, GDC reports, stuff like that. But you always want to make sure that you have that type of stuff to get a real valuation done on your practice. Evaluating your business and determining a fair price is obviously something you want to, you probably have something in your mind as to what you think your practice is currently worth, but I think that being realistic and kind of looking at the multiples of what's going on here in this market right now is something you want to do. Like we just talked about, considering tax implications, capital gains versus ordinary income. A lot of these deals can be structured as capital gains, and that could be a sticking point for you as a potential seller. Is getting them positioned as capital gains against ordinary income will cut down about 10%, sometimes more, on the taxes that you're going to pay. Seeking professional advice to ensure a smooth financial transition. We do them. We don't do certified valuations or anything like that, and that's something that many companies do as well too. If you are going through the bank financing process, it's almost like a mortgage company. They'll send an appraisal out and they'll put in their own valuation on that as well too. So if you are going through bank financing, they'll get a certified valuation. They'll put the valuation on that as well too. So
Yep, and just going back to capital gains versus ordinary real quick. I'm not going to go too deep into it, but basically an ordinary income, a lot of times you'll see if you're a W-2 advisor. So if you're with Morgan Stanley or some of the wirehouses and you're W-2 and you sell your practice, or you take their sunset provision or something like that, a lot of times it's structured as ordinary income. On the independent side, it's typically much easier to structure it where you're maximizing your tax, or really minimizing your tax liability, right? So, but yeah, going back right into kind of items that will affect your valuation. Everything's going to be based off a multiple of whether it's gross revenue, or as you get to the larger businesses, you start seeing them valued off EBITDA multiples. And then it's just a matter of how high or low that multiple is going to be and certain things that, will affect that, right? So recurring revenue, fee-based, advisory, fee only, any of that versus transactional, that's like the biggest driver right there. So everybody wants fee-based, everybody wants advisory, wrap accounts. People are paying handsomely for those types of businesses. And then the more your business is fee-based, versus let's say it's 99% fee-based, that's going to be valued at a slightly higher multiple than if your business was only 50% fee based and the remaining part was other products and however it's set up. So fee based, a lot of people who really want to drive the valuation of their businesses now are starting to convert over to fee based. Now, the issue that I've come across, many advisors have talked to me about, is how do you go from being one type of advisor for 30 years, your whole life, and then now in the last 5 years, you just get it's hard. It's hard to do it on your own to try to convert. You don't have the story. You don't, it can be challenging to do that, which I think why, merging with a group who does do fee based, go back earlier to where I said you complement one another. That might be something you kind of think of too, because they can help you convert to fee based, in turn making your practice more valuable. And then transactional value, right now recurring revenue. I don't know. Do we touch on what the multiples are on the next slide? No. Okay.
No, you can go
So
over it.
yeah, so recurring revenue fee based right now, on average, we did a presentation with one of the banks, and they were telling us they were seeing about 2.8 as an average on fee based or advisory. Now that's 2.8 of GDC, so top end revenue. But we're really on a wider range. It could be as low as 2.5, or we've seen a couple coming in now at 3.5, or purchases being done for 3.25, 3.5 times. It's not out of the question. But again, it's going to matter. And I'll talk client demographics are gonna matter for that. But transactional revenue is a 1 times multiple. So anything that you need to do a trade or an A share mutual fund or what have you, it just or an annuity, you took the upfront commission versus the trail, that's going to generate a 1 times multiple. And then usually everything else falls in between. Anything that's considered recurring but isn't fee based is typically a 2 to 2.25. So 12B1 fees, annuity trails, things like that are going to be in that 2 to 2.25. So you just kind of take everything and put it together. But some of the things that will drive those multiples up or down are really client demographics. What are the age? What are the ages of the clients? If the majority of your clients, let's say more than 50% of your clients are over the age of 70, that a potential buyer is going to look at that and could significantly decrease what they're willing to offer. It'll bring, a valuation is a number. It's really a business. I always tell this to people. It's only worth what somebody's willing to pay for it. But that will affect the valuation. So if your clients are a lot older, that is going to negatively affect. It's not going to make it where it's you take a 3 times multiple and brings it down to a 1, but it'll certainly knock it down a few ticks. And then the same with number of households. You want to make sure you're getting rid of some of your more labor intensive. As you start to think of selling your business, start to get rid of some of your more labor intensive clients, because I think if you have 30 million and 500 clients, that that business is going to be valued less than a $30 million AUM practice with 30 clients or 40 or 50 clients. So you want to keep an eye on that too, not only the age but also how many. Some people will look at that and be like, well, there's 1,000 clients, that's a lot of work. There's not a lot of, maybe if it's a couple hundred million AUM, that might not. But if it's only 50 million AUM with 1,000 clients, somebody might look negatively at that book. And then also how transferable the client base and your assets are to the new firm, right? So that's really more of not a value, like a bank valuation or our valuation isn't really going to factor that in as much. But that's more of like when you're talking to a buyer, if a portion, like I mentioned earlier, doesn't transfer, they might not, there's a chance they might not value it. Although a lot of savvy buyers these days, you know, they understand that, hey, both sides need to be happy. So some people might be willing to offer up something just because they see some upside potential to it. But again, that's going to just depend on the buyer. So
Yeah, and then succession timeline and implementation. Establishing a clear timeline for your succession plan, is important. I think that you want to figure out when you want to be done working, full time at least. A lot of these deals that we see, 12 months is kind of a minimum of what we see advisors stay on before they actually walk out the door. I think that you want to make sure that you are almost positioning as a merger, that you're there for the clients and that you're not just kind of selling them and leaving. Those clients don't typically stick. And I'm sure a lot of you have had personal relationships with these people for 20, 30 years now at this point. I'm sure you want to make sure that they're taken care of. And that's something that we always want to hear from a seller is, the welfare of their clients and where they're going. So I think it's important to kind of figure out, what your time frame is and kind of being realistic about it as well too. Are you looking to continue to grow and structure an earnout? We talked about that a little bit. If that, if you're 5 years out and maybe your book is not, fee based right now, but you think you have the capacity to do that, this might be a good time to start looking at who may be a good partner for you, and help and somebody that may help you be able to do that and really provide you with resources that will make that easy as well too.
yep.
Those are good things for earnouts.
Yeah, and you know, when you talk about timeline too, people will say to me, you know, hey, if I want to sell my business today, you know, you have to calculate the just even from the time a deal is closed, right? Which from the time you identify somebody to the time you actually structure and get a purchase agreement and everything put together could be easily a couple of months, if not longer. Also, if you wanted to sell today and leave the business, in many cases, you can't do that, right? So you have to stay on for at least a 6 to 12 month period in many cases to help with the transition, make sure your clients are happy, make sure the buyers got all the assets over. So when you look at timeline, you almost have to be like, wow, I'm 2 years out from wanting to retire. I should probably start looking at this almost today, you know. But that just kind of gives you an idea of it's hard to you can't really just sell the practice and be out. It's really more transitional than transactional.
And maybe all you need is a contingency plan. That's important. If you don't have anything set up for yourself, I highly, highly recommend going out there and getting something set up for yourself, even if it's just a death and disability agreement, within somebody within your BD. That doesn't mean you have to sell to them. It's not binding. It's not anything like that. But if, God forbid something happens, at least a lot of the value of your book will still be able to be given to your family members at that point. So maybe all you need is a contingency plan. But I would, if you're within 5 years, I would be looking for who you're actually going to be transitioning that book over to at this point. Contingency plan is, maybe 10 years, 7 to 10 years, something like that. And even 7 to 10 years, you may want to tuck in with somebody and kind of work. And, there's a lot of different buyers out there that are open to all sorts of different options. Maybe you don't have a time frame in mind for yourself. A lot of people don't actually. But what may be beneficial for somebody that does not have a time frame in mind for themselves may be to merge or partner up with somebody that is growing, that is acquiring, that may be able to help you grow your book in that process, and that you also feel comfortable with eventually transitioning your book to when you are ready for that. And there's a lot of people that are open to that type of situation. So if you are in that 7 to 10 year time frame, it may not be a terrible time to start looking at who may be your successor and who you can actually work with to help further your business now until you are ready to actually sell it off. And ensuring a well-structured implementation process is always something that you want to make sure that you have, because you don't want to be passing your clients off to somebody that you hardly know or trust. So we always tell people that positioning it as a merger is always the best thing to do, because they'll be familiar with who you're transitioning over to by the time you're actually ready to hang it up. So that's always something that you want to make sure that you're doing. It will make the client stick more, and in theory, it's really going to make your book value stay what it is. Because if you have a retention clause built in to your agreement of 90% with a 12-month look back period, and you only bring over, let's say, 80% of the revenue, you're only going to get paid out 80% of the remaining balance of what's due to you. So you want to make sure that you're doing what you need to do to make sure that these clients stick. And part of that is figuring out who's going to be the best fit for them.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and like Scott, just to touch on that real quick, and we're at the end here, so we want to just kind of start to wrap it up. I want to be mindful of everybody's time, but yeah, I think that that's an important like a well structured implementation. Like even if you're 2 years out, you still there's a way you want to position it to your clients as such where I'm not selling and just leaving you with somebody else. It's gonna be a merge for now. They're gonna be my ultimate succession plan and take over, whether it's in a year or 2 years. But right now we're merging. You're still gonna be able to talk to me. I'm still gonna be able to sit in on the meetings. So when once and that's like all post sale type of stuff that we kind of help. We don't do much on post sale, but we are more than happy to give you talk to the buyer and seller about advice on, hey, maybe there's a certain letter that goes out. Maybe you do an event with all of your clients that gets everybody together and meets them and gets, all of that kind of stuff but that's important to have though, as you're starting to, figure out who you're going to deal with in this regard. So,
and we have a question. If the business is sold, how long do you have a non-compete? Our agreements have at least a 36-month. I would fully expect to have at least a 3-year non-compete in place in any agreement that a buyer is going to sell as the recourse. Another question: in the merger scenario that you're describing, how does the selling advisor get compensated? Um,
I guess there's a few ways. It depends. If let's say your timeline, I think will matter a lot on this. If you're 10 years out or 15 and you're just doing a merger to create economies of scale, really, you're going there, you're getting maybe the same, if
transition.
not better payout.
Oh, you can get a
And
transition bonus. You can get a
yeah,
transition.
you get transition money from the
Yeah,
from the BD going over there, right? And then, but you might do something like that because they have better back office staff, or you get a higher payout. But yeah, a lot of broker dealers now are offering pretty significant transition money usually based off your trailing 12, and you might get that up front. And it depends. If you're going right to the broker dealer as an independent, that's one thing. If you're merging with a larger firm that's already in place, that's another thing.
in the case where you're just transitioning 6 to 9 months, you could position that as a merger to the clients. 6 to 9 months is short.
Yeah, 6 to 9, you're really going to be looking more at a sale. I mean, you just want to because you're not lying to your clients, right? I mean, you're telling them what's happening. You're telling them that, hey, this is I want to make sure that you guys are taken care of. But over the next 6 to 9 months, I'm going to be here. I'm going to be able to answer any
Yeah,
questions, talk to you, walk through everything with you. But from if we're talking about whether it's structured as an actual merger or sale, 6 to 9 months, you're probably going to structure it as a sale.
yeah, you'll definitely structure that as a sale. You'll be in client meetings with the buying advisor and kind of giving your good word of the advisor over to them and kind of giving them the good feels that you'll be around throughout the transition. But it would be tough to position that case as a merger.
Yeah, because then if you're out in 9 months, then it's like, well, I thought you were merging, So it's just that's not. There's ways to talk about this where you're telling them that you want to be truthful, clearly. So you want to, but you want to also make them feel comfortable, and I think that's part of the transition
And
process.
then what is the compensation in a sale when you attend meetings? Typically, your sales price has a built-in 6 month to a year of you doing that. That doesn't mean that you're working 40 hours a week. that just means you're helping with the transition in any way possible to, to help get the clients over.
Yeah, John Smith has a meeting at 11 o'clock to meet with the new buyer. They may say, hey, do you mind coming and sitting in for an hour or so? And that's all you're doing that week. Maybe you sit down with a few of them. It depends on how many clients and things like that. But yeah, yeah, any consulting fees are usually, if you're staying on for more than say 6 to 12 months and they're expecting you to deal with clients, maintain your license, stay on and actually work, yeah, then you consider consulting fees. And usually whether it's a salary or
Yeah,
something.
there's also situations where maybe you're staying on for 5 years and you're getting paid a salary to do the
Yeah.
work. You may want to liquidate or have a liquidity event on your book and stay on and get paid. And those are certainly options as well too. There's a lot of different options. There are buyers nowadays are very flexible, and you can kind of dictate what you want to do. And we're pretty upfront with we're good at delivering that news to them as well too.
Yeah. But and now really just
How many buyers are in our network? So we work with about 40 buyers right now. But we also have the capability of going out and looking for exactly what you're looking for. So if our buyer that we have in your area or territory is not a fit for you, we will go out there and figure out who would be the best fit for you. And sometimes our buyers are not the best fit. We try to bring in very portable buyers and good ones. We usually look for advisors who are at least 100 million plus, have done acquisitions in the past, and usually, are working with larger BDs or something like that. But we have a pretty extensive network of advisors that we do work with.
Yep, and that's just going to depend on how specific a potential seller is. I mean, I think the buyers that we work with cover, like Scott said, a lot of ground. But if for some reason it has to be somebody in Montana who clears through, Commonwealth or something like that, and that's like one of the things where they're stuck on that. They're not there's no way that they're going to talk to anybody else. At that point, we have a larger network. I mean, Scott and I have worked with many advisors over the last 10 to 12 years. So, we could always go if somebody fits that exact criteria, we could be like, oh, hey, maybe this person might be interested. And, we would try to match it up as best as we can to the criteria you've kind of set there for us.
Yeah, but we have done the work in pre-vetting the people that we have in our program right now. So that's, we brought them in. We had a choice of who to bring in into most of these territories. So what we have are typically very strong buyers and people that have done this before. So we were very confident, even if they're not within your BD, of at least introducing you to them and seeing, what they may be able to do for you. But again, if you have you may have a forgivable loan that you cannot leave your BD with, and in that case, we may be able to work something out as well too. And then this is kind of about us and who we are. We're a consulting firm that specializes in acquisitions and succession planning services for advisors across the country. We work in basically every state. We help facilitate acquisitions really by working closely with you guys and finding the best possible match. And again, we vet our buyers out. We make sure that they are people that have done this before, that have strong books, that have capacity to bring on additional clients and advisors as well too. We feel very strongly about the people that we have in our program, and again, we really had a choice of who we wanted to bring into this program. So we've done our due diligence on the people that we have here, and we offer a wide array of services. Like I said, we'll be sending out a profile for you guys. We'll be giving you out, a complimentary valuation if you fill that out for us. But we also do all the legal documentation in house. We help with structuring the deal. We help negotiate sales price and everything in between that. So, we're more than happy to help out with that. The buyer in this program is the one who actually pays our commission too. So our services to you are on the sell side are completely complimentary and paid for by the buyer. So we don't charge anything on your end in that process.
Yep. And I think that actually is a testament to how serious and how, a lot of them are very, they're very interested in acquiring. They feel like they already have the staff structure and support to take on new assets, and they're working with us and paying us to do it. So, that they're serious, and that they're, from a financial standpoint, they're in most cases relatively sound.
Yeah, and here's all of our contact information. Like I said earlier, Joe, I think it comes from you, right? Joe will be sending out an email. It should be tomorrow. It'll either be tomorrow or Monday. We will send you out a link with where you could fill out information to get that complimentary evaluation. And we'll be following up with all of you by phone, probably Monday, Tuesday, somewhere in that neighborhood. If you want to talk to us before that, feel free to reach out through email or the phone, whatever you'd like. We're more than open to talking to you guys, even if it's something that we may not be able to profit off of. We're more than happy to have conversations with you guys and give you some insight into what we've gone through. And I'll kind of open the floor up here. I have one question here. If anybody has any questions, feel free to throw them out here. Raise your hand, whatever you'd like. From Rick, buyer pays commissions and costs, but does buyer or seller pay for valuation? We actually provide that. That's included in our services. The valuation is complimentary as well. If you want to go out there and get your own independent valuation, you're probably going to pay for it as the seller. But we do that in house, so you really wouldn't need that unless you're really, if you don't think our valuation is to par with what you're thinking the book is worth. Yeah, maybe you want to go get a third party valuation. I would say that the seller would probably be responsible for that, though.
And keep in mind, if you use bank financing,
They're going to do it
they're
anyway.
gonna have their own valuation
Yeah,
anyway.
they're like a mortgage company. Basically, they're not going to lend out more money than the book is worth.
Yeah, if you think your business is worth 2 million and the bank thinks it's worth 1,500,000, they're only going to give the buyer a
Yeah.
1,500,000.
So there's good recourse on both sides that way.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
All right, I think we got it just in an hour, so that's perfect. Well, again, appreciate everybody taking their lunch break on the East Coast, but their time here today. And again, we look forward to speaking with you. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us.
Thank you all. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
I have one more. Are you linked to any PE?
Private equity firms? Uh, Yeah, actually, it's funny. I just talked to a few. Most of the sellers don't want that unless they just want a crazy multiple and they have a big business, because it's not as, from a client standpoint, they're not crazy about it. But there are different PE firms out there now that are working with RIAs and such that I think could be good for the right fit.
And
So
we can honestly, if you have specific needs, just reach out to us. We'll be reaching out to you guys too, but just reach out and we'll be happy to help you out with anything that we possibly can. I've had people contact us about trying to potentially sell off a walk-in medical clinic before, and we've actually been able to help with stuff like that. So nothing's crazy to us at this point. Just reach out and we'll be happy to assist you in any way possible.
yeah.
And appreciate everybody. I'm going to shut this down now. I don't have any other questions. So thank you so much. And we will talk soon. Thank you.